Hi, boys and girls. It's nice to make another video for you. Miss Line is going to continue reading Midnight on the Moon, the Magic Treehouse number 8. But as you can see, I'm outside right now in my backyard. I'm very fortunate to have a nice backyard to sit in, and I hope that you are getting opportunities to be outside with your family and being safe. And I'm thinking about you all and missing you all. So I made this mural with sidewalk tape and some painter's tape. And it took me a while, but I really like it, and I like that it can wash away when we get some rain. Not that we want rain right now. Okay, so as you know, Jack and Annie have traveled to the moon, and they're looking for the last M thing, and they just put on spacesuits, and that's where we left them. Chapter 3, this is chapter 4, and it is called Moon Rabbits. Chapter 4. Here we go. "Oh, wow," said Annie, and she took a step forward. But Jack froze. He wanted to get a good look at everything first. He stared at the ground. He was standing in a layer of fine gray dust, like a powder, and there were footprints everywhere. Jack wondered who could have made them all. Then he reached into his backpack of the moon book, and to his surprise, the book felt as light as a feather. He found a picture of footprints on the moon, and he read, "The moon has no rain and wind to blow the dust around, so footprints will never be naturally removed, not even in a billion years." "Wow," said Jack. The moon was the stillest place that he had ever seen. It was still like a photograph, and in its stillness, it felt like it would never end. Jack stared at the inky black sky. A lovely blue and white ball glowed far away. Earth. And for the first time, it really hit Jack. They were in outer space. "Look!" cried Annie, smiling and laughing. She bounded past her brother, almost flying through the air, and landed on her feet. And then she jumped again. "I'm a moon rabbit," she said, and she called. Jack laughed. Can you hear the construction in the 2 or 3 houses down? I think I'm going to keep going here. How does she do that? He wondered. And then he turned and he read, "A person weighs less on the moon because of moon's low gravity and lack of air. If you weigh 60 pounds on Earth, you're going to weigh only about 10 pounds on the moon." "Just don't stand there reading," said Annie, grabbing the book from her brother and in his gloved hand and tossing it into space. At that time, it flew further away, and Jack stared after it. He bounded up and down, boing, 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 and now he felt lighter than a feather. "Look," he called to Annie, "I'm a moon rabbit too." Jack's boots hit the ground and moon dust gracefully sprayed into the space. The book had landed at the edge of a shallow crater, and when Jack reached for it, he tried to stop it, but his feet slipped. He fell right over and laid on his side. He tried to stand, but he was off balance, so he tried again. But the dust was just too deep, and his spacesuit was too clumsy. "Are you okay?" asked his sister. "Well, I can't get up," said Jack. "Well, I don't think you should have been goofing around that much," said Annie. "You goofed around first," said Jack. "Now, can you just help me up, please?" Annie stared towards him. "Don't fall too," he warned. "I won't," said Annie, moving very slowly, half floating, half walking. "Give me your hand," she said. Annie grabbed Jack's hand and she pressed her boot against it and pulled. "Thanks," he said. There's a picture of them. Whoops. There we go. "No problem," she said. "It was easy. You know, you're really light right now." "Thank goodness. It's impossible to get up by yourself." He picked up the moon book and it was covered in dust, so he brushed it off. "Wow, look," said Annie. She stood at the edge of the crater. "What is it?" said Jack. "I think it's a moon buggy." The buggy was parked at the edge of the crater, and it had 4 large wheels. "Let's go for a ride," said Annie. "Oh, we can't," said Jack. "We just have to we've only got 2 hours of air in our tanks, remember?" "I bet we'll find the M thing much faster if we used a moon buggy," said Annie, bounding towards the crater's edge. "But I can't drive," said Jack. "Oh, I bet I can drive this," said Annie. "It looks easy. Come on." "But you don't have a driver's license," said Jack. "Oh, who cares? There aren't any roads on the moon. There aren't stop signs or police people either." No, she was right, thought Jack. "Well, go slow. I will, she said. Annie sat in the seat and pushed the label on button, and the moon buggy lurched forward. Yikes, she said. That was quick. Hey, step on the brake, said Jack. So Annie pressed a pedal on the floor, and the buggy stopped to a quick jerk. Phew, she said. I think it's in reverse, said Jack. Let me do a little studying. But before he could even stop and look at the book, Annie pressed another button, and the buggy tilted back, its front wheels starting to rise into the air. Get me out of here, thought Jack, and then Annie pushed more buttons. The buggy's front wheels landed back on the ground, and the buggy leaped forward. Go slower, please, said Jack. I kind of can't. I don't really know how. Annie steered the buggy over the tracks on the ground, and the wide wheels kept it from sinking into the dust. Careful, said Jack. The buggy zoomed out of the crater, and gray clouds of dust rose up behind them as they took off across the moon. Chapter 5 is called Hang On! And there's an exclamation point right here, and that means when something's exciting. Annie drove the moon buggy over bumps and hollows. It felt like it was on a bucking bronco. I'm going through there, she pointed between two open places in mountains. Jack held onto the dashboard, and the buggy bumped towards the opening. On the other side, the ground was even rockier. Hey, let's look for the fourth thing, she said, bounding up and down in the moon buggy. Jack groaned. Looking for anything on this wild ride felt impossible. You need to slow down, said Jack. How? Well, try pressing the brake pedal on the floor. So Annie slowly pressed the brake pedal, and the buggy slowed down. Jack sighed with relief. The ride was still very bumpy, but now at least he could take a good look at the moon. He had never seen such a colorless, barren place. There was no green, no blue, no red, no colors at all but gray. No water, no trees, no clouds. Only giant gray rocks and craters, and an American flag. Oh man, said Jack, that's from the first astronauts that landed on the moon. And look, a telescope, said Annie. She drove near the flag and the telescope, and then she put her foot on the brake until the buggy came to a complete stop. She pressed a button that said off, and then she and Jack hopped off. They took a slow, giant step to the site of the first moon landing. Beside the flag was a sign, and Annie read it out loud. Here, men from the planet Earth set foot upon the moon. July 1969, A.D. We came in peace for all mankind, said the sign. That's a pretty cool message, said Jack. He handed the moon book to Annie, and then he took out his own notebook and his pencil to copy. Hey, why don't we leave our own message right here, said Annie. Well, what would we say, said Jack. Well, we could say kind of the same thing, but like being the first kids on the moon. So Jack turned to a brand new page in his notebook, and in big letters, he wrote a message. Jack signed his name, and then he passed the notebook and the pencil to his sister, and she signed her name and passed it back. Jack tore the piece of paper and put it by the flag. Today, the first kids from the planet Earth came to the moon. We came in peace for all children, Jack and Annie. No wind would ever blow this message away, and no rain would ever fall on it. It would kind of be there forever, unless somebody moved it. Thinking of forever, Jack could feel like he was getting a bit dizzy, shook his head to clear his thoughts, and then he remembered the time. Oh, had 2 hours passed already? I wish I had a watch, he said, standing. I think we might run out of time. Oh, wow, a moon man, said Annie. What? Said Jack, turning to look at his sister. She was staring through the long telescope near the flag. Jack walked over to the telescope, and Annie stepped aside so he could look too. He gasped. In the distance, something was flying around the ground. It looked like a giant man in a spacesuit coming towards them. Here he is. I have to say, I really like this picture. I imagine that's what a spaceman in a spacesuit would look like. All right, I'm going to read this one more chapter, and then I'm going to pause. It's chapter 6 called High Jump. Right there. What is that? Said Jack. I don't know, said Annie, but we'll soon find out. She started to wave towards the spaceman. Don't do that, said Jack, grabbing her hand. Let's go back to the base before he gets here. Why? said Annie. Well, we don't know who he is, and we don't know if he's friendly or mean or what. But but we can't go back, said Annie. We haven't found the fourth thing yet. We won't be able to go home anyway. Oh, it doesn't matter. Maybe we could lock the door in the moon base and then wait till he goes away, said Jack. Well, then we can get new air tanks. Jack hurried towards the moon buggy. Come on! He jumped into the driver's seat, and Annie gave a wave to the dot in the sky that was moving slowly towards them, and the buggy took off. Careful, said Annie back to her brother. They bumped along the rocks as Jack turned the buggy around, and they zoomed towards the pass. Jack steered around craters and rocks, and once more the buggy nearly tipped over. Whoa, slow down, said Annie. They were almost to the mountain pass, and suddenly a cloud of dust flew up in front of them, and the ground began to tremble. Watch it! Jack couldn't see a thing. There was dust everywhere, and he stepped on the brake, and the buggy jerked to a stop. Then the dust settled. A giant rock had fallen into the narrow pass, and it was stuck between two walls. They were trapped. Jack quickly found a picture of a giant rock in the moon book, and he read, Rocks of all sizes crash into the moon from outer space. These rocks are called meteors. We're lucky that meteor didn't land on us, said Jack. Yeah, I guess so. It's a kind of a big thing to be the M thing we need, said Annie. She climbed out of the moon buggy and was standing by the meteor. It was more than twice as tall as she was. Jack looked at that black sky. The flying thing was nowhere in sight. Yet. Well, let's go jump over it, said Annie. Jump? I don't think so. It's way too high. Well, I'm going to try it anyway, said Annie. Well, wait. Let's think first, said Jack. He and Annie had already backed up. 1, 2, 3, go, she shouted, and took a giant step, leaping towards the meteorite. When Annie got close to the rock, she bounced off the ground and flew through space, disappearing behind it. Annie, said Jack. There was no answer. Oh, brother, he said. He backed up and he took off towards the rock. He jumped as high as he could, and then he was flying through the space. Then he hit the ground face down into the dust. He tried to stand, but his suit was so bulky, and he tried to roll over, but that was impossible. Oh, no, said Jack. Not again. Are you there? Asked Annie. Did you make it? Well, yes, said Jack. He could relieved to hear his sister's voice in his ear, but he couldn't turn his head to see where she was. Can you help me get up? Nope, said Annie. Why not? Well, I kind of fell down too, she said. There's her picture. Oh, brother, said Jack. Now we're real in trouble. He tried to stand again and failed. Can you see anything, he said. Well, I can see some sky. Wow, that's weird. Well, I'm worried about our air tanks. I feel like it's already been 2 full hours. Jack, said Annie. And what about the moon man, said Jack. Where did he go? Jack, whispered Annie. What? He's here. The moon man. He's right here. What? Said Jack. He's standing directly above me. All right. That is the end of today's chapters. I will record a new one with the moon man. All right. I hope you are doing okay, and you know how much I miss you and love you all. And tune in next time.